If you ever think someone isn't creative, just look at their excuses.
Visakan, Veerasamy. I want this episode to be for that creative who wants to monetize their work and doesn't want to follow the usual 9-to-5 path. What is getting in most people's way?
People miss diagnoses to avoid facing the truth of the problem. If you pretend that the problem is that you're stupid, the solution to being stupid is I need to get smarter. But you don't actually need to get smarter to make good stuff. You actually need courage.
If somebody is finding themselves like spiraling over the same I'm stupid thought pattern or whatever it is, how should people get out of their own mental ruts?
Serene Desiree Podcast.
Visakan, Veerasamy, how are you today?
Hey Serene, I'm good. I'm living with a 14-week-old newborn baby, so that's a mess, but it's a very happy mess. And so my sleep's all over the place, but it's invigorating, and I'm just happy to chat with an adult.
I'll try not to cry. That's so nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How is it to have a baby? Is it like anything you expected?
Yeah, I mean, so I've done a lot of reading over the years of like what it's like. So it doesn't nothing surprised me like out of the blue. But it is, as like some people will tell you that you can't, like, how do I put this? It really gives you a new lens through which to look at everything else going on in your life and all your past history and every experience you've ever had. So it's very reinvigorating in a way that even if you read about it, you can't simulate like the second order effects of what. So like an example of what I would say is I brought my kid to a family gathering, and people will say, oh, it's nice to watch your family respond to a newborn. But like there are these cascades where, like you see your parents suddenly being so gentle and curious and playful. And then you see how your other family members respond to your parents being like that. And so there's all these cascades. And it's those cascades that I find you can't adequately prepare for. Like it will just surprise you because it happens so fast and it's so many levels. And that's like that for everything. Like even just putting him down to bed. Like so he's fallen asleep on me and I want to transfer him into the cot. And like if I'm too slow, like I'm very nervous about how I put him down, he can sense that and he wakes up. And if I'm in a rush to put him down, he can sense that and he wakes up. So I have to be like this very zen, like just effortless, casual ease, which is not easy to do. So it's I've described it as like the most consequential and powerful mindfulness exercise in a sense. And I imagine every parent has a different take on it, and it's like it reinvigorates each person differently. And it's been all the cliches are true. Like it's really the most meaningful, the most profound experience.
Wow, that's so crazy. You have to alter your mental state because this baby is picking up on everything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They do too. They do. I have 2 nieces and a nephew, and I was doing handstands in the backyard with the 2 older girls, and then the nephew comes over, and he's 18 months old, and then he tried to do a handstand, and he nobody had told him to, like he just seen us and he tried to do a handstand, and I was thinking like, oh, he just literally copies everything in his environment, and if I was screaming at the kids, he would be screaming. Like if I was, doing. Like he will mimic anything. And so like it's so important that whatever you do around this child is the right thing to do. Like you have to be a better version of yourself around kids.
Yeah.
So the reason I had you on here today is because you're a very successful blogger and writer. You've written 2 books and like over 1 million words, I think. What's the count now?
So I have a specific writing project stand alone from everything else, where the goal is to write 1 million words. And on that project, I've written 853,000 so far. But at the same time, I have like blogs and I have tweets, and so my total word count is probably around like 2 million or something.
Wow.
But like for the specific project that I'm trying to do, I'm 85% done.
So I really wanted to use this podcast to help creatives get out of their own way. Like, I think that seems to me what most of your blogs are about, what your books are about. In part, I mean, there's other things as well, but like, I want this episode to be like for that high school student, for that university student, for that creative who wants to monetize their work and doesn't want to follow the usual 9-to-5 path.
Right.
So like my first question is, what is getting in most people's ways? Because there are so many artists who want to become prolific and they're just not. And so like, why aren't they?
I think it's usually some kind of fear, and and everybody is afraid of a bunch of things that manifest different ways. But it's usually when I talk to people, I find that people who want to make stuff, they have taste. Like there's stuff that they like and there's stuff that they don't like. And I think there's this great Ira Glass quote where he talks about the difference between a person's taste and their ability to gratify that taste with what they produce. And so it's kind of tragic where the better your taste is, the more refined, like you've read a lot of books or you've watched a lot of movies or whatever, and you have a strong sense of what you like and don't like, then the bigger the gap will be when you're starting out between what you can make and what you would like to see. And the gap between that is emotionally challenging to endure, to know that, I can. You might not even be able to imagine it super well, but when you write something, you know that it's not good enough to meet your taste. And there is a struggle involved in trying to close that gap. And that requires courage, it requires patience. You have to endure disappointment and failure. And that's just universally stuff that people are not very good at. And it definitely helps to have someone who believes in you, or a group of peers, other people who are doing similar things. And there's other things like people judge their drafts against other people's finished products, where like you might read a book that you like and you feel like, I can't write that well. And part of that is true, but part of it is that author of that book went through rounds of editing and had other people's eyes on it and got feedback and all of those things. And so there is like a kind of optical illusion where people see the state of their current work and they find it unimpressive or wanting in some way, and until they've crossed the gap, they can't see across the gap. So it's this kind of chicken or egg paradoxy thing where you kind of need faith. You need to believe that it's possible. And again, I think it helps to see other people go along their version of the process and to hear from people who have struggled. And like, yeah, so it's long story short, I think people just aren't prepared for how tedious the process can be. I really like these. I haven't actually watched the documentary. There's a documentary about Hayao Miyazaki, who's one of the best filmmakers, animators in the world. And it's a documentary about his creative process. And there's a Twitter thread with screenshots from that documentary. And every screenshot is like, he's just so frustrated. He's like, I'm not there. I feel like a comb with teeth missing. I feel it every day, the limit of my ability. It's such a hassle. I've worked all day, I only have one page. And it's so much of that, just janky, messy, unproductive. I think Hemingway had a quote that's like, it might be Faulkner, but I think it's Hemingway. It's like, I write 99 pages of shit for every one page of decent material, and I try to put the 99 pages in the waste paper basket. And like, yeah, it's really making good stuff requires making quite a lot of junk. And I think different creatives have different comfort levels with regards to how much of the messy stuff they are willing to surface to other people. But I think it's quite inescapable that, so even if someone does a great debut novel and it's like really amazing, they almost definitely were struggling in private with not much to show for it at some part of the process. And yeah, so there's a whole side thing to get into about how the modern information, like social media environment that we are in, kind of encourages people to perform their process, which is itself like this adds this whole meta of, oh, even like your struggling has to be aesthetic in some way that you can present to people. And that's a whole nother, like, it's not necessary, but it's helpful for building an audience if that's what you want. You know, it's messy. But yeah, did I answer the question?
Yeah. I mean, what stood out to me was like the relationship with failure. I think most people, do you think it's that prolific artists can tolerate failure more than other people?
Um, that's a interesting. Uh, my instinct is that people who are prolific just have a different. Tempted to say brain chemistry, but it's like, just different taste or different style, different vibes, different inclinations. Like we want to try a dozen different versions of a thing before we even decide what we're actually making. And some people are not like that. Some people are like, no, I know what I'm trying to make, and I'm going to try and make it. And if it's not working, I will keep trying at that one thing. So, like, there's this parable. It's called the parable of the pottery class. And I first heard about it on a blog post, but it's referencing a book, Art and Fear. And in the story of the pottery class, this idea is that a pottery class is divided into two sections, so like A and B. And everyone in A is graded by what's the nicest pot you can make. And everyone in B is graded by volume of pots you can make. And so everyone in B makes 30, 40, 50 pots. Everyone in A makes like one or two pots and they try to make it really good. And the end result is that all the nicest pots are from the people in B. And that kind of clicked something for me when I first read it. And that's what inspired me to do my million word writing project. The idea being that when you haven't started making pots yet, you don't yet even have an idea, a good idea of what a good pot is, like what it looks like, what it feels like. The process of making pots will change your idea of what a pot is. So if you're only ever working on your first pot, you never get to really refine that. And so you end up being limited by your mental model of what you think a pot is. And there may be some people who are like exceptions to this rule where they don't seem to make a bunch of stuff to get a better idea of what the thing is that they're making. But for me, I find that my personality really works with the more volume of material I have, the more angles I can understand things from, and I have a more nuanced perspective. So you asked, are prolific creators better at dealing with failure? I think, in a sense, yes. In a sense, no. It depends on how you're framing it. I think that, I guess you could say prolific creators tolerate a lot of small failures more, but they don't have to deal with as much of a like big, drastic, this either really, really works or it really, really doesn't kind of scary failure. Like, so I might say that I don't have the constitution to like work on a book for 7 years and not show it to anyone and then publish it at the end and maybe it's a hit, maybe it's not. Like that terrifies me. I don't know how people do it. Whereas I like to tweet a lot, so I get a sense, I get feedback on every tweet or every essay, and that helps me triangulate what I'm trying to do. So yeah, so in a way, being prolific is my way of like microdosing failure, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. What's your Twitter handle, by the way? Everyone go follow him.
Oh yeah, Visakan V, Visakan V. Yeah,
It's very good. Ah, Visakan. Okay. That's it.
that's one way of pronouncing it.
Ah, yeah. So what comes up in my mind is so I play music, like and
Nice.
my biggest, I mean, I've been playing for a long time, but my biggest roadblock, I guess, is that I don't sit down and play as much as I want to. And so like, how do you advise that people just get that structure in their lives to just perform the iteration, to make those pots?
Yeah, this is hard because there's stuff you can say that sounds correct. And so I am similarly, I've been writing for 20 years. I've also been playing music casually since I was like 15 years. I had like long periods of time where I wasn't playing anything. And, there's people give advice like, oh, do a little bit every day, or have a routine where you start first thing in the morning or last thing at night. I think those are, pretty sensible ideas, but it never really worked for me. Or like if it works for periods of time, but my personality is such that I haven't been able to commit to a practice for life every day. Like I haven't been able to do that. Even with writing, I have like booms and busts, and like some periods where I'm write more in a month than I write in the whole of another year sometimes, and I'm okay with that. But I do know that that's not ideal for improving your chops potentially. But I think where I'm at with it right now is I try to think in compelling projects. I think that's what makes the most sense to me. So rather than try to impose, so you said like, how do you have structure, right? So rather than try and impose this universal structure, which some people might like it. So if it works for you, then do that.
It doesn't.
But yeah, so yeah, I think universal structure can be a bit oppressive, right? So rather like try and feel for what is something that is slightly out of your comfort zone that you can't do yet, that is compelling and exciting, that if you were able to do it, it would be cool. And then, so the thing there is to be honest with yourself about what you find exciting. So when you really find it exciting, then when you see yourself making progress along that goal, you should feel compelled to do more of it. But the tricky thing is that people struggle to be honest with themselves about what they really want to be doing. So they might feel that, oh, I'm interested in this genre of music, but that's not very, fashionable or cool or prestigious or important. And so they feel like, oh, shouldn't I be studying the classics, or shouldn't I be learning circle of fifths, or just something that you should be learning? I've come to believe over like decades that the thing that you're most interested in is going to end up being the most fruitful. So I really go back to the heart of your personal psychology, your emotional connection with your material. Like why, so what do you love about music? Or what do you love about cooking? Or what do you love about writing? What are the feelings that it evokes? And yeah, I think all the technical stuff comes later. So even there's a great Quentin Tarantino quote that I like about, so he's talking about filmmaking, but he's talking about creativity really, right? And he's saying that if you really, really love cinema, then and like you really enjoy movies and you argue with yourself about why you enjoy what you enjoy and whatnot, then it doesn't so much matter like what lens you're using or what, all those details. It's just by following your taste, you can't help but make good movies eventually. But so you have to be following your own personal taste. And I think that can be scary for people who are starting out. They feel like, well, my taste is untested, unproven. I'm just some guy or girl. And, there are all these grades. And shouldn't I do what the greats did? But if you investigate closely, the greats were following their taste. So you shouldn't necessarily be listening to who they were listening to and copying who they were copying. You should discern the process that they were following, which is that they were listening to and copying who excited them at the time. And the times are always changing, right? So what was exciting 10, 20 years ago may not be the same today. But yeah, it's scary, like to follow your own taste. And I think when you're starting out, it might make sense to like partition it maybe in half, where you spend half the time doing what is normal and common and familiar so that you don't alienate audiences or confuse people. And then maybe even like 10% of the time. So I always tell people, try to spend at least 10% of your time making stuff that only you understand or only you care about, and almost be deliberately unwilling to modify that to be easier to explain to other people. So it's a spectrum. So you have a body of work, right? Or you have a range of interests, a bunch of different projects. And so I do hear from a lot of people asking, how do I build an audience? How do I get relevant? How do I blah, blah? And there's that. But if you spend your entire body of work trying to match what the market wants or what the audience wants, then you lose sight of your own taste. And ironically, always at the end, what the audience really, really wants is to be in the presence of an artist who is gratifying what they really, really want.
Yeah.
Like in a very deeply personal. So the most deeply personal, intimate things are the things that universalize quite well. Whereas the things that people try to make to like placate like this average of what everyone likes, then everyone just people might say, oh, it's kind of good, I guess. But no one's going to love it, right? The thing that people really love is when you go deep on the thing that you're really interested in.
I love that. Yeah, when I started playing guitar, someone said to me not too long ago, I mentioned that I can't read music. So guitar players have tabs, which is like an easier version of reading music. But I don't know if everyone in the audience does. But and someone said to me, oh, you can't read music. That must have hindered your progress. And I was thinking like, I think if I had learned to read music when I was in high school, I probably would have given up guitar because it would have been too boring.
Interesting.
And, like actually learning with tabs and learning the songs I wanted to, and then learning how to improvise was a great choice for me because I stuck with it, and like it made me want to keep going back. And so,
nice, yeah. I remember there used to be I used to hang out on like guitar forums a lot. And there's every week or every month there's an argument about, oh, should you or should you not learn to sight read? Like, will it make you more or less creative? And people have perspectives on both sides, and there's always the synthesis of, well, it doesn't have to limit you. Well, but I think like all the things are true. Like each creative, I think, is ultimately obliged to gratify their own process. And if your process tells you, maybe I should learn to sight read, then you should try it. And if your process tells you, no, I want to just feel the instrument and play by ear, like then you should try that. And like maybe in 10 years you'll go the other way or something. But the thing is to gratify whatever the taste wants in the moment, which again is like kind of scary because like what if and then people say things like, but what if every day I wake up with a different idea? And I think the way to approach that is to write down what you think your idea is. And you'll find that over a period of time, like a few months or maybe a year or 2 years, you end up cycling back. You don't really have like 1,000 ideas. You have like 50 ideas that you kind of come back to repeatedly. And so that's manageable. And yeah.
Yeah, you talk a lot about journaling, and there were some really helpful points that I read in Introspect about journaling. And I'd just love to hear, like, I really like what you said about just when you have free time, you should, and you watch Netflix, you should journal. And I wonder if you want to talk about that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like so, I always despair a little bit when I see people beating themselves up for, oh, I scrolled so much TikTok today, or I watched so much Netflix today, and it's such a waste of time. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be. Like, and okay, there's layers to this. You can find some kind of acceptance in the need for leisure. I'm not that enlightened. I wish I was, I think. A part of me wish. But if you're a creative, everything that you encounter is fodder for your process. Like you're always learning something, even if you don't realize what it is. And so yeah, my recommendation is if you watch a trashy movie or you see something, whatever you think is not that important, then nonetheless, you would have had some feeling about it. Even if the feeling is just, wow, that whole movie was so dull. Like you can then ask, why did I think it was dull? Like what would I have done differently? What would have made it not dull? What is the thing that if it happened would have changed everything for the better? And like that process of inquiry, it develops your taste. And the thing I found, once you get into the habit of that, like investigating your reactions to things, then you start simulating what you would like instead, you can actually start to enjoy bad movies and bad writing or whatever, because your brain starts to auto-complete what a better thing would have been. And then you can just use that and you end up writing better movies or better screenplays or better whatever. Like so, I love this quote from Borges, the Mex. No, he's not Mexican. He's South American. I can't remember. Argentinian, yes, Argentinian author, Borges. He says that an artist is always working, even in his dreams, right? And I'm like, God, it's so true. Like it's just all material is relevant. I remember. Now I'm remembering. For some reason I was watching an interview with Emily Blunt, and she happened to be talking about something that she put into the Devil Wears Prada. There's a point where I think Anne Hathaway's character is saying something, and then Emily Blunt goes, "I want right now you're doing this, and I want you to do this, right?" And it's such a specific little anecdote, and turns out that she saw a mom in like a supermarket doing it to her child, and she saw that she's like, "Oh, that's so compelling! I got to use that somewhere," and so she put it in a movie, and then she mentioned it in an interview, and I was watching that, I don't know, while doing the dishes or something, and it stuck with me. And now I'm mentioning it in a podcast, right? Like that mom who was doing it to her kid had no idea how far that gesture would travel. But yeah, there's interestingness everywhere, even in dullness. And once you can see that, it's like it never stops.
Do you carry a journal around with you everywhere?
No, I just type stuff in my phone. I guess I have like a notes app, or I might tweet it sometimes. But usually I just type out stuff in my notes app, and then I try like once. Now I have a kid, so it's messier. But I used to like once a week or so I would like review my notes and like copy over stuff that seems interesting, delete stuff that doesn't make sense, and just sort of process that.
I like that a lot. And that's kind of what it sounds like. Journaling has been a pretty pivotal point to your success.
Yes. Yeah, I once went on a learning journey, I guess, like investigating all of the creatives, and not just like the number of people who have journaled and then done successful things, or like if you investigate successful people in many different domains, they all have some kind of study, right? So even like Bruce Lee had a notebook, and like there are all these people who have notebooks. And the thing is, our memory is not great, right? We forget like 80% of everything almost immediately. And so if you write down things that moved you or things that were interesting to you, or really the magical thing is, even if you're writing down like arbitrary, or today I did this and then I felt that way and I want to do this, I don't want to do that. Like these very small, seemingly trivial things. And then you revisit it like a year or 2 years later, you will surprise yourself with how many thoughts that you had that you don't remember having, And how many of them are surprisingly smart? How many of them seem remarkably deviant from the narrative that you have of your life? So, like, you might have an idea for writing an album, and then, like, 3 years later, you've forgotten about it. And then you read your old journals, you're like, oh shit, I had that idea for an album. And it was surprisingly well thought out and had many moving pieces or whatever. And I find that, so when you have this journal, you have a log of your thoughts, it invalidates the assumption that you're not creative. Like, we're creating even like all the time in small ways like that. Like, we have ideas and we have thoughts and perspectives. And if at any point in time you ask someone, do you have thoughts and opinions? They will, even if they are quite a thoughtful, opinionated person, they will underestimate how much they actually have. Because we're always narrowing down our field of perception, we're narrowing down our what we remember. It's kind of, I'm remembering now from Aldous Huxley's Doors of Perception, and he's talking about he's talking about sensory input. Like, so we filter our senses and we only notice a small fraction of what we actually see. And the same is true for like memory. We can't care, like, so a lot of stuff is short-term memory. And so if it doesn't fit the primary narrative of our lives, it just kind of falls off. One detail I always remember these days is before I got my job working in marketing, I wanted to be a flight steward when I was like 20. I wanted to fly around the world and then write in cafes and stuff. And about 3 years, 4 years into my career as a marketing guy, I completely forgot that I was once most excited about being a flight steward. And re-encountering my own writing, like, oh, I'm so excited for this thing. And it didn't work out. And then I forgot about it. It just kind of reopens, it re-enchants the world, right? Like, oh, what I think and feel about who I am and what I do is actually this very narrow slice of the totality of my being. And that must be true for everyone else. And it must be true for everything. And so it's once you, so I think a tweet I have somewhere is like, journaling lets you jailbreak, like escape from the prison of like your short-term memory, of your sub-vocalizations, meaning like the thoughts that you have in your short-term memory. And it just lets you see how much more wide and expansive life can be, friends can be. Even scrolling through, like, if you've been chatting with someone for years, you scroll back years and you'll see like, oh wow, we talked about that. Or like, there's all kinds of surprising details that we forget. And journaling is a way of remembering. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So, from your books, it sounded like you had somewhat of and I mean, I'm kind of inferring because based on what I know about like Singaporean society, but it sounds like you had it sounds like the environment that you grew up in was really academically focused and
That's true.
less encouraging of like being a free spirit creative type.
That's very true. Yeah.
And I'm wondering what the story is. Like what were you like as a teenager, and then how did you become the man you are today?
Oof, that's sweet. Well, so I was born in Singapore in 1990, which I would say, again, I could write a whole essay about this, and I've been procrastinating on that for a long time because there's so many details, and I don't know what to prioritize. But so to understand like the big sweeping strokes, Singapore came into being. Modern Singapore came into being like after World War II, when it was occupied by the Japanese, and the whole nation building project was very much like a post-war PTSD country, city state, and like the people in power very much fueled this like insecurity narrative, like, oh, we are this tiny little island city state and we got conquered and like never again, right? So we have to work really hard, and that's with Like we don't have the time for frivolous things like poetry and literature. Like we got to focus on things that increase GDP. Right, the whole culture was like that, the whole country. And to be fair, for a few decades from like 60s, 70s, 80s, like yeah, everything was the standard of living was increasing dramatically. Singapore is in a great place along global shipping route, and like globalization was happening, and like so like an entire generation did much better for themselves than the previous generation, and I think that probably repeated for another generation maybe. Um, but there was, I would say, that strong undercurrent of insecurity, scarcity mindset. There's this phrase used a lot called kiasu, which means scared to lose. So like you always gotta hunt for bargains, and you always gotta, just make sure that you're not gonna lose, right? Like it's a very competitive, cutthroat kind of environment. Uh, at the same time, like so, being born in 1990, I was about 7 or 8 years old when I encountered the internet for the first time, and that was like in the early internet days, right? And I was a library nerd. I loved books a lot. But I had no pathway to seeing how I could become a writer. So like books exist. I know that books exist, which is great, but I don't know any writers or publishers. So it feels kind of like a separate from myself process that I can't get involved in. But when I encountered the internet, I'm like, oh wow, it's like a library that I get to post to directly. Right? I don't need to go through a publisher or whatever, so I can just publish myself. And so I was very excited about participating in that. And I very quickly felt that this is the future and this is what I want to be doing in my life one way or another. Um, and when I was a teenager, I got very into music. I found that some friends brought me to like local music shows. And again, so like the wider Singaporean culture felt very sterile and clinical. But like the local music scene to me felt like, oh, it's so authentic and like punk rock and honest and true. And I wanted to participate in that. And at the same time, there was like an internet forum for Singaporean music where like mostly people would talk about buying and selling gear, like pedals and stuff. But also there's like, oh, there's a gig happening this week, and people have MySpace pages. And so that felt like a window into a bigger world, right? So you have all these like this international bands and stuff. And so I wanted to participate in that space. And I did. I played in several bands. I organized gigs by myself and with my friends. And nobody, no adults in my life did not approve of this. So my parents didn't approve, my teachers didn't approve. Like it was generally seen as a kind of a delinquent thing to do. But I was very determined to participate in something that felt emotionally resonant and honest and true. So again, even before music, I loved books. I read a lot of books as a kid, and I felt an affinity with the authors that I read. And I've said a few times, I feel like I was radicalized by library books to believe that life can be an adventure of learning and curiosity and sincerity and earnestness. And I really believed that. Like I would read the books and I'd be like, yeah, this is true. And I would encounter people who read those books, but we're like, this is just fiction, just entertainment. Welcome to the real world. We don't really like that. I'm like, I can't be the only one. I'm sure there are other people. I mean, the authors definitely believe it strongly enough that they sat down to write the books. Right? They devoted years of their life. So I want to be around such people. And in my dramatic teenage years, I was like, if I can't live like that, I'd rather die. And I think I meant that. Like if I had to wear a shirt and tie and go to a corporate job, I would be very depressed. I was even kind of depressed working at a very fun, exciting startup with a very liberal culture, like people being very, oh, come to work, whatever hours you want, just get your stuff done. My boss was very smart and encouraging. Like a great work environment. I was still kind of depressed because I don't want to have a job. I want to write what I want to write. I want to have fun doing what I want to do. And it did take me years, so like if young people are listening, I don't want to give people the impression that you can just burst out of the gates doing what you love and like the world will accept you Like, sadly, no, it takes time. You have to find your people, and that means talking to lots of people, and a lot of people are not going to get it. So it might be like 1 in 100 people initially, right? You post on Twitter, or you reply to things, and you go out and you meet people and you talk to people, and a lot of people may be like, "Oh, you can't make a living doing that. Are you sure? Are you crazy? Like, that's silly. That's dumb." There's like a lot of that. But you persist. And so I used to do that, my creative writing stuff, like on the side, on my commutes on the way to work and on the way back home. Like, I just felt like if I had stopped doing that, again, I would feel dead inside. Like, I needed to keep that spark alive somehow. So I would write on my commutes. And yeah, so I left my job in 2018. I married young. Me and my wife met when we were kids, and we married at 22.
Oh,
And what happened? When I left my job at 28, I felt like I had a small window, it seemed to me, in which I could try to strike out and do my own thing creatively for about a year with the savings that I had from working for a few years. And I felt like if I didn't do that then the next thing would happen would be I would get another job in marketing, like try to do more senior roles, make more money, have kids. And then from there, it gets harder and harder as your lifestyle creeps and you have family to worry about. And the older you get, I think the harder it becomes to try like creative experiments that might leave you broke in the meantime while you're running them. So I'm very grateful to my past self and to my wife, but she knew who she married, right? But like still, I told her like if I don't take the time to try some creative stuff, I will be dead inside. I'll be depressed. I'll be like, I need to do this, and she's like, yeah, of course. And so I did that, and my Twitter started blowing up. It wasn't. I mean, so it wasn't immediately enough to make a living, but it was a sign that there was something there. So I would then do some consulting work with other, like, so I used to work in marketing, and there was someone that I knew from like marketing forums, and we recognized each other because we were both the only people who would really put in a lot of effort into replying very thoughtfully, where everyone else was like being spammy. And he was like, Visa, I started my own company and I would love to hire you. And I was like, because here's one guy that I would love to work for. And like anybody else said that, I would probably say, nah, thanks, I'm good. But I told him to his face, like over a Zoom call. He's based in Estonia. I said, the thing I'm afraid of is I will want to work for you and I will love working for you. And next thing I know, I'll look down, I'll look up, and like another 7 years have passed, and I'm in my mid-30s, and I haven't done anything creative. And he was like so chill about it. He's like, oh sure, let's figure out an arrangement that makes sense for both of us. Like I want to work with you, but I don't want you to be unhappy. And I was like, wow, people are like this. Like such people exist. I didn't know such people existed before. And so he ended up being my first consulting client. And he basically helped me figure out the terms and arrangements for how to do a consulting gig. So like I was getting paid almost as much as I was at my previous job for much less working hours. It was in some sense higher stakes, so it's like more professional than I used to be. Like I used to be someone's employee and I would just do what they told me to do mostly. Whereas as a consultant, you're kind of like offering guidance and making recommendations. So you better be doing proper things, right? So that was more challenging. And marketing has always been interesting to me. I feel like marketing is creative in a sense. Like you have to figure out how people's perceptions are and how to present an idea and so on. But yeah, so even after my Twitter started blowing up, which is, after a decade of writing and getting good at writing, and then after a year of tweeting a lot and building an audience, I was now, I started a Patreon in 2018. And the framing I put on the Patreon then was, I want to know if I'm ready to go pro as an author. And I don't want you to bullshit me and be like, I like you as a person, so I support you. Like, no, only support me if you believe that I am ready to transition into a full-time author of some kind. And I got like dozens of people. I think at the highest it was like 100 people, which was enough money to pay about like half of my bills, which was amazing at the time, right? But not enough still. So I still had to do consulting work. But knowing that once you have 100 people or so who support you, finding the next 100 people is just a distribution problem, right? It's not a
You've already
0 to
passed
1.
the first test.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So once you pass the first test, everything is so much easier from there. Like, I want creatives to know, like, once you have that initial audience of people who like your stuff, like really like your stuff, then it's just a matter of getting out there, right? I'm just talking to more people, doing more stuff.
Because
So
mathematically,
I would say, yeah,
it
by the
means-
time I did the Patreon, sorry, did you say something?
Oh, I was just, like, mathematically, it means that, like, let's say your Twitter reached like 100,000 people, and
Right.
0.1% of them actually liked your stuff enough to put you on Patreon. That just means you
Right.
need to reach 200,000 people to double it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's even cooler than that, because people are not like random discrete individuals. They are networked with peers who are similar to them. So if the first 1,000 people you talk to, only 5 people like your stuff, chances are the friends of those 5 people are more than likely to also like your stuff. So like the first 1,000 people or so, you're searching for the 5 who like you. Then you gotta double down on those 5 people and like where they hang out, who their interest groups lie with. And like, and often people who like something are already fans of similar things. So like, if so like my book Introspect, I frame it as it's a remix of like Carl Jung and Nietzsche and Joseph Campbell. And so I can reach out to fans of those authors by I could write like Substack posts about Nietzsche and about Carl Jung. And then it can be like, if you like the 2,000 words I have written about my perspective on Jung, then you may like my book, right? And so it flows from there. So this is like a marketing understanding.
and the best
of
part
how
is
things
as
work.
well, there's also going to be like, out of 1,000, there's going to be 5 or 10 people who hate your stuff, and they're the best because they retweet all of your shit and they talk
Yeah,
about it.
true.
And then people who follow them and some of them like your stuff.
Correct. Haters do the best marketing sometimes.
It's amazing.
Yeah, they work really hard for no pay. It's amazing. Yeah.
And replies are great for the algorithm. Like every time you get a comment
exactly,
or a reply, it's like it just boosts you up. It's amazing.
So I'm a Paramore fan, and I remember I was scrolling through my Instagram and I saw someone reply, "I can't believe this shit is on my timeline," and then I replied to it, replying to you so you see this shit again, it's just like you can't. The only move is to not respond if you don't like something, because anything else just feeds the algorithm. Yeah.
No, for sure. And people will never do that, which is the best. So you're huge on Twitter. What are your favorite Twitter accounts, do you think, right now?
A while ago, I had a friend, Isabel Unraveled. She was like on a hot streak of like, I think she had just left her job to pursue like creative writing, and she was just doing these really good, like introspective, like similar to me but different. It's interesting, like just kind of feel your feelings. Again, when I talk about it, I'm gonna simplify it into a very narrow thing. But she really has her own style and vibe, and I enjoy seeing her tweets. I know Sai Soon, SIGHSWOON. She was huge on Instagram, and she's now on a Twitter phase. So she's also really fun to read in that sense. Oh, there's this guy, Dan Wowery. I'm not sure how to spell his last name. Let me check it. I can't remember how to spell his last name. Oh yeah, DANWUORI. So what he does is he's like a early childhood education specialist, and he reposts cute videos of like parents and kids from TikTok, from Instagram, and then he leaves this really thoughtful commentary about what's happening at like a neurological level, or like what's the how the learning is happening, or the imitation, all those things, and it's just so enriching. First of all, you have a cute video of a child and a parent or something, and then you have this really intelligent analysis that invites you into this world of nuance, right? And it makes me feel more excited to be a parent, even to participate in a child's flourishing. Yeah, stuff like that.
I saw this great Twitter account. It was and it was like TikTok or something, but I'm sure they're everywhere. It was like, I don't remember what it was called, but it was like babies and dogs, the toddlers and dogs. And she talks about toddlers interacting with dogs and then what the dog's body language means. So like,
Ooh.
yeah, like there's this one video where the dog's showing its belly and
Right.
and she goes, it's like really stiff, and it's like this is like a submissive posture. It's not like a rub my belly posture. So she like talks about all the body language and how you can stop your toddler from getting bitten by a dog, essentially, but also super cute dog videos. So
Nice.
yeah, I'm sure you can just find it if you Google it.
Is it Dog Sense?
Maybe. Might be that. Does that look like it?
Might be. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
There's a dog body language needs to be read within context.
Yeah, that's probably it.
A bunch of stuff like that. Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool that the internet has allowed people to specialize and go so deep in niches. So like I enjoy watching like YouTube documentaries about, I saw one, I think it was the making of a video game, and they spend like half an hour talking about the trees in the video game. And it's like the team went out into the forest and they studied textures and trees, and they made it really feel very natural and immersive. And like if you're watching a movie in a cinema or something, they probably don't have more than a few minutes to devote to that. But because the long tail on YouTube or TikTok or whatever is effectively infinite, you can make as long as a documentary you want about any topic you want, and like the economics somehow works out, right? Like because people can keep watching it indefinitely.
We've really monetized autism in a big way.
Yeah, that's true.
You can just be in your special interest all day, every day. And it's like,
That's
people
true, yeah.
love it. They laugh it up. I'm the opposite. I'm kind of ADHD. I'm like, I'm more scattered, way more scattered. Like it's good to niche down for podcasts and really pick a topic. And I cannot do it. I do not want to. I just want to.
No, so I think that being an ADHD generalist is a kind of, I don't know, you wouldn't describe it as a special interest, but it's entertaining in its own way. It's harder to condense into a soundbite, right? But like, it is pleasurable to follow a wild mind bounce from thing to thing, and especially if they know how to bring it all together, which I think in the early stages, an ADHD person might just kind of lose track of things halfway. But you can practice kind of trying to explore within some kind of theme or some kind of idea. And this can take like a decade, I guess, for you to find your like home bases. So you start somewhere, you go freestyle somewhere else, and then you kind of bring it back home to one of your talking points or one of your points of interest. And so I think that's what I do. I think like so as a marketing consultant, I advise my clients that they should focus on something, and usually at the intersection of two things maybe. But I like my writing and like my Substack, for example, the tagline of my Substack is all the channels at once. And the thing is that I try to do is not stick to any one thing. Like I want to show how all the things are connected, which is a hard sell because you don't get to promise someone something very deep and specific in a very easy way. But I do think it's fulfilling. It takes longer. It takes longer for people to see the value of it, but it is valuable. And I do think that like in mainstream society even does not sufficiently appreciate the value of like generalists and like people who can see connections across different domains. So like we have this like Western philosophy. The history of Western philosophy has been breaking things down into components and into subcategories, and this niches down here, this niches down there. But like reality itself is a whole, right? And so like when you see how things connect across domains, there's you can find surprising value and insight that way. And I think it's also just pleasurable for its own sake. Yeah, so it's my perspective.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I see myself as a big pattern recognizer. I think that's one of my strongest skill sets. I think the way to market, if you're not going to niche down super hard, is I think you have to build a personality brand. I think it has to be a lot more focused on who you are, and they tune in for you specifically. Like Joe Rogan, for instance. I mean, the biggest podcaster of all time. Like he does such a huge variety of topics, but you kind of tune in because you trust him. I think that's one of the secrets. Yeah.
I even find, so I think I was doing a thread on Twitter parodying comedians, like with like earnest, like not to make fun of them, but to just try to practice using their voice to talk about things. And it becomes very clear that probably half or more than half of the enjoyment people have from checking out a comedian that they love over a long period of time is to just inhabit their voice. Like they could be talking about anything, and if you enjoy their voice already, you want to see them do anything, right? Like they could be going on a holiday and just talking about what they see, and it's entertaining, right? It's like vlogging. And yeah, that also takes time. Like you don't know in advance what's gonna resonate or stick about your style, but you just develop it.
That makes a lot of sense. That comes back down to what you said about breaking out of your own prison. And you've written pretty extensively about this, about like how to get out of your own. I think we get in mental ruts a lot. And maybe comedians are, like you said, helping you get out of your mental rut, like helping you see something, transport yourself to a different person's mind, a different person's perspective. And then, interesting. How should people get out of their own mental ruts? Like if someone is finding themselves like spiraling over the same conversation or the same like I'm stupid thought pattern or whatever it is, like how do you break out of that?
I mean, so the biggest general thing is to do something different. So like even literally go somewhere new. So like, if someone's really deeply invested in the I am stupid narrative, I'll be like, well, again, it depends on the person. I usually don't like attack the claim head on, because I think when people are entrenched in a position, if you say no, that's not true, they already have defenses for it, and they already have like counter arguments, and like even arguing against it entrenches it deeper. And there's actually parallels to what we were talking about earlier about like algorithms and haters. Like it's just reinforcing the thing by holding the frame. So you want to change the frame, and like one thing might be like, so what if you're stupid? Like what's wrong with that? Like there are people who are stupid and incredibly successful, or people who are stupid and incredibly happy. And like what's wrong with being stupid, right? That's one way of approaching it. Another thing is to just distract them from the thing entirely and be like, okay, sure, like but like if you could have a fun day doing whatever, what would you like to do? Right? Like I think sometimes people find that it might seem a bit disrespectful to disregard someone's frame. It's funny, I've noticed that the skills of being a really good dinner party host is like this micro dosing of the same behaviors that, if used selfishly and maliciously, is the same thing as being like a manipulative narcissist, which is things like a person says something and you pretend you don't hear them, or you might even say, I'll pretend I didn't hear that, as a way of saving face, as like conveying that I don't want to engage with that thing that you just said because it's going to make everything worse. Whereas you can also use that to like evade accountability. So there's no escaping using judgment for what's appropriate and what's not. Like, there's no universal. But yeah, there's a bunch of sneaky things you can do to be kind of cheeky and playful and nudge someone out of their rut. And it's often like you distract them, you insist that they follow you on like a shopping trip, or go like something that just disjoint with what they're doing. Right. So it's like, if you can, so a person might say, I'm not feeling creative. I can't produce anything. Instead of arguing with them about that, try to get them talking about something else. And if you manage to have a conversation, at the end of it, you can point to be like, look at all the stuff you said. Like you just created that. So you can create stuff. You know, like one of my favorite tweets was, I wrote, if you ever think someone isn't creative, just look at their excuses. Because they can manufacture so many excuses in so many dimensions. So yeah, it's not that people aren't creative. I think it's that people are afraid to admit that they are creative. Like it's kind of trippy. It's like people use misdiagnoses to avoid facing the truth of the problem, right? So it's like, if you pretend that the problem is that you're stupid, then the solution to being stupid is I need to get smarter. But you don't actually need to get smarter to make good stuff. Like, you actually need courage, right? But as long as you think the problem is that you're being stupid, you're never going to address the courage problem. And so that's a very effective way of remaining in stasis, which is safe, right? Stasis is safe, is familiar. It can be unpleasant. People don't actually mind unpleasantness that much, right? I think another one of my tweets is, a lot of people prefer to make shitty choices and complain about the shitty outcomes than to make better choices and deal with the new outcomes, which can be scary, overwhelming. You know, like, success can be dehumanizing in some ways. Like, you have to deal with all these new things, and people have expectations of you now, and they might, this is messy and painful. Like, I was rewatching a John Mayer interview with Zane Lowe, and he's like freestyling a song in real time. He's just improvising and making up lyrics, and it's pretty good. And he tells Zane, I can do this actually theoretically at any moment in time, but I don't do it that much because it requires a stupid bravery. And so that phrase, stupid bravery, really stuck with me. I made it like my intention of the year, to be stupidly brave. Right? So it's like, it doesn't take intelligence to produce work. That's the thing. So people think I'm too stupid to make stuff, but it's not your stupidity that's inhibiting you. You know what I mean? So there is like this dark intelligence, like the subconscious saboteur intelligence, that's so smart that it knows that to assert that it's stupid will allow it to maintain stasis. Right? And like, yeah, change is painful, change is scary. Like, what will people say? People make fun of you. People say this is not that good. Like, you have to be okay with all of those things in order to make stuff. So you have to be stupid, and in a way, right? Yeah. So that's the spirit of how I approach this.
How do you deal with critics online?
I usually say something like, there's this old ancient Roman or Greek guy or whatever who said, when someone tells you these are your faults, you say, this person must not know me very well because they've only listed such a small selection of my faults. Right? And again, it's the same thing where it's like you accept the criticism, but you don't accept the implication that criticism has anything to do with who you are as a person, or whether or not you should produce more work or whatever. So you can be like, yeah, I make shitty songs, like, sue me, right? Like, like, I'm just gonna keep doing it. Like cheers. Oh, one thing I like saying, I just did this to someone yesterday. Someone's like, oh, your tweets are so irresponsible. for an impressionable audience or something. And I responded like, cheers, his name. I'm only gonna tweet even more irresponsibly moving forward. Right?
In your name.
It's a yes and. I agree with you, and I'm gonna do it even more. Right? I think I had once a YouTube comment that was like, your book review is very unpolished and tedious. You should learn from others how to do it better. And I said cheers and thanks. Unfortunately, I'm committed to my path of stupidity, and I'm gonna make another 100 terrible, tedious videos. Cheers. Like, it's like I accept what you're saying. I'll have fun with it. I don't accept the implication that I should feel bad about myself or I should stop doing what I'm doing. And yeah, it's also seeing your body of work as like this larger, ongoing process. And whatever you're doing now is a stepping stone for what you're going to be doing later. So like, if it's shitty now, like, yeah, that's welcome to the shitty part. You may or may not stick around for when it gets better, but like I'm going to keep doing it and see what happens.
I'm curious, like, from an embodied perspective, because this is something that I'm trying to figure out too. Like, when you get the negative comments, do they hurt a little bit at first, or do you just have like a wall? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I once had this conversation with a close friend, and I was discussing David Bowie. There's an interview with David Bowie where the interviewer asks, "Does it hurt?" And he seemed to expect Bowie to say, "Nah, And Bowie said, "Yes, it hurts me very deeply. I'm a very sensitive person." And I love that so much. Again, it's the same thing. It's like, I don't have to pretend that you're not getting to me. I don't have to pretend that I'm like happy all the time. But the one thing is that I'm not going to quit. So it's like, and that goes back again to why stupid bravery is required and why it's stupid and why it's brave. Because we're volunteering to get hurt and we're going to get hurt more. And like some people will say, oh, if you're going to be a creator, you have to have a thick skin and not let the haters get you down and blah, blah, blah. And there's something to that, but it's not as straightforward as people think. Because when you start deciding that you're not going to listen to some people, you're introducing a filter, and filters are always like double-edged swords because you don't know in advance if the person is trying to hurt your feelings because they're an asshole, or they're just offering genuine perspective and criticism, and you should maybe listen to it, right? So it's like, and that's part of why celebrities go insane, is that they introduce filters and it makes them they become like secluded, ivory tower kind of stuff. And so it hurts. It helps to have trusted friends and peers that you can discuss things with, and people who can encourage you and say that, I see what you're doing. I trust you. I respect your process. I look forward to seeing what you do next. So it does hurt. I do still. It hurts. In some ways, it hurts less though. I used to be much more overwhelmed. I used to be much more triggered, I think is the word, right? So I would have an emotional response when someone criticized my work. It felt like an invalidation of me as a person. Like, I have failed as a person. I am a failure. How dare you say that? And now I've learned to see that. And again, this also goes back to journaling. Like, if you've journaled for a long time, or if you've read history, if you read biographies and stuff, you see that, the things that people say don't necessarily correspond to how things turn out. Like when Apple was doing not so well, Newsweek was like, the fall of an icon, like the company will never do well again. And then they became so huge. And it's like, there's just millions of stories like this. So you learn to have a bit of a detachment from what people are saying. And, I still get a bit annoyed, but I found a way to be like playful with it. And I think as long as you remind yourself of what you're doing, why you're doing it, who you're doing it for, then like, so I know that I write for very earnest-hearted people, and so when a cynical person has cynical criticisms, it doesn't bother me at all because I'm like, you're not my audience, so you're basically just you're almost doing marketing for me, right? Like I have friends who have tattoos and who tell me that, I mean, I have a tattoo, but like people who are like heavily tattooed, they're like, oh, sometimes you meet people who assume that a heavily tattooed person is bad in some way, and they're like, oh, you're doing me a favor. You're preemptively showing me that you're not someone I want to associate with. And I think when you're younger, especially, you might have a scarcity mindset with regards to people, and you feel like I only know so many people, and someone's disapproval of me is painful and scary because I don't know that many people. But as you get older, you're like, oh, people come and go, like friend groups, kind of dissipate, and new groups emerge, and like time and tide happen to everything, and so you do learn as you grow older. I think if you're reflective and thoughtful, you learn to see that everything changes, and so you don't need to like hold on to things so tight. Yeah.
You say grow older, and I think it's to me it's more like entering into a new developmental stage, right? Where like
Yes.
There's like typically teenagers are like really focused on what everyone else likes, and they're really cued into like their social status in the group. And then as you get older, obviously social status is still important, but it's like, oh yeah, I don't need to impress everyone. Like, and there's something deeply rooted into us. I think that's, especially when you're a kid, you have like evolutionarily, not so much nowadays, but back with our, in the times of our ancestors, if you didn't acclimatize to your social environment and do what they said, you could have been killed. Like
Yes.
you could have been left behind, right?
Yeah.
And so
Correct.
being social and like being socially aware is like survival to us.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, people are very much attuned to fear rejection more than death, even sometimes. And what I have found is that enduring a lot of rejection and disapproval and all that, it gets much, much, much easier when you have even one friend in your corner saying, you're not crazy, I see what's happening, those people are overreacting, and like that just separates things from I am uniquely outcast from this entire social environment to, okay, I have someone with me who sees my point of view and is in a way like psychologically, physiologically, like in that substrate, right? It feels like you're not alone, and so you're not gonna die, like emotionally.
Especially in person. If you have an like,
Yes.
I feel like an in-person friend who's attuned to you is like so valuable.
Yeah. It instantly. So I spend a lot of time on Twitter. I think I'm pretty good at it. I'm pretty good at managing, dealing with people, disagreements, blah blah blah. But like, it's always even a few minutes hanging out with someone. I mean, so even on a Zoom call, face to face, but even better in person when you attune with someone, it's like, it's so easy to be with someone and to feel what they're feeling and they feel what I'm feeling. And I don't have to explain myself so much. Everything just makes sense. And when I haven't had that for a while and then I get to have it, I'm like, it's such a, how do I go without it? It's so stressful to go without it, and you don't realize that you're getting stressed with the burden of like explaining yourself.
Oh,
and
especially
trying to
on
be understood.
Twitter, dude. Like you
Yeah.
tweet something and everyone takes it in every possible direction, like even impossible directions. That yeah. Twitter is I'm loving Twitter nowadays. I'm really liking it, but also it's like I think a lot of people need to clean up their timelines, like get rid of shit that makes you mad. Like
that's very, very true.
You're going on Twitter and you're just getting angry. Like you're staring at your little light box and you're just getting angry at it. Like, I mean, I do it too. I used to, especially. I had to figure out how to like clean up my social media because, man, when I would go on, I would notice that I would like go on profiles or whatever that would make me angry, like political stuff. And then I would just carry it with me. I would notice my thoughts. I would notice that my thoughts were angrier. And I was like, oh, this social media is actually impacting, like it's changing my thought patterns on a
Oh
daily
yeah.
basis.
Yeah, I think in tweets, and
Yeah.
I have to like, it takes time for me to not do that. I mean, it has its benefits, but like sometimes I want to experience, like the feeling of sitting at a beach for hours and looking at the sea. You can't really condense that in a tweet. Like it's really, it's like an expansive experience, and yeah, I do find that like tweeting a lot, you get into this very kind of neurotic, that kind of feeling, which I enjoy. But like, there's more to life than that. Yeah.
It's very pithy. It's very like there's
Mhm.
a setup and a punchline very quickly most of the time.
Indeed.
I want to know how you knew that your wife was the one.
Oh, that's pretty. Yeah, so we were dating when we were kids. We were like 14 and 17, and her parents did not approve of our relationship. And when they asked her to choose between like them and me, like they trying to threaten her, like to threaten to disown her, thinking that she would flinch. She did not flinch at all. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'll leave home and be with this guy." And I was like, "How do you have the conviction to do that?" And I just felt so honored by her conviction, I guess. That I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to hell for this lady." Like to the if she's willing to not blink when her parents disapprove of us, then like I'm not gonna be the one to break that. And like our story has like a happy ending. Like her family came around eventually, especially now that we have a kid. But yeah, at the time when we were kids, it's especially funny that her parents didn't want us to be together when we were kids. If they had left us alone, maybe we might have broken up from like natural causes. But they gave us like a common enemy to, we can't give in. Like we might have a small fight or something, and like maybe we might have normally thought of, this is not working out, maybe we should break up. But we're like, no, we can't let them win. So we have to work through our issues together. So yeah, it's probably my in-laws' disapproval that, like anointed our relationship.
Again, it's the pressure, like putting pressure on externally, trying to control. Usually, like it often has the opposite effect.
Mm.
A lot of things are like that. Interesting. And what I want to know what you would say to that like high school kid, because I know I was this high school kid who struggles to study and hates it and procrastinates with video games and is angry at themselves for not doing better in school and not reaching their potential.
Oh man, that was me. um, so I would be careful not to tell them what they're doing wrong, or you know. So the mess here is that you're young, right? So you don't know much yet about yourself, about the social environment you're in, all of those things. But you can feel that something's not right, and it's very natural to feel that that something is you, that there's something wrong with you. You are not fitting in well enough. You are not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and that's a very one-sided perspective. And the bigger picture is that, okay, something's not working out. But if you could zoom out and see the bigger picture, that like from a global point of view, a misfit is always both the thing and the context, right? So it's not just the thing, and so the context is also misfit to the thing or to the person or to the kid, right? So you know, school is not very well designed. Like it's a few hundred years old, and it's archaic, and it's designed to get people to do standardized tests. It's a mess, and people have known that it's a mess since like Montaigne 500 years ago, maybe older, and it's just not designed for human flourishing. And so it's very normal for people to chafe against it. And the resource allocation, like teachers are poorly resourced. They don't have enough time and energy to attend to each individual child. The parents are probably tired and overwhelmed and not excellent at performing the roles that they should be performing. So there's this big mess. And I would actually spend, so if it depends on how much time I have, but I would spend a bunch of time, let's not even talk about this. I want to hear, what do you like to do for fun? What do you enjoy? What have your favorite experiences been in this life? If you could do anything someday, what would you like to do? I don't care. Let's not worry about can it make money or whatever. I just want to know what you're like. Who are you? What do you want? What do you care about? And basically, the whole mess around I should be studying, but I'm not, and I'm procrastinating, and I'm such a bad person. All of that mess, I think it's like I call it shadow sovereignty. It's basically a part within yourself that wants to be independent, that is fighting back against the repression of authority and the social environment. Why do I have to go to school? Why do I have to do my homework? Why do I have to do what people tell me to do? Why can't I just do whatever I want? And even if the individual is smart enough and self-aware enough to know that, oh, that child self within me or that sovereign spirit within me is not helpful, that knowledge does not solve the problem. The problem, you can't wish away the sovereign spirit. Some people try to suppress it, and they suppress it well enough that it works, which I think it's a tragedy of its own kind. But usually, the people who are talking about this, they have not been successful at suppressing themselves, and so they have to try something different. And so, again, it depends on each kid, depends on their personality. In my case, I was never gonna be a regular guy with a regular job. And owning that truth as a student in school, as a minor, was not allowed socially. Even now, if I, as a 34-year-old man, go to a 16-year-old kid and say, hey, it looks like you're not a regular kid gonna have a regular job, that's kind of a radicalizing, irresponsible, quote unquote, thing to say, even if it's true. Right? Just the social norms dictate that I'm supposed to pretend that, oh, you're supposed to go through the motions, blah, blah, blah. So it's messy and complicated. I think a lot of the relief just comes from knowing that you are in this bizarro world. School is not real life. School does not reward collaboration, whereas in real life, you can create a ton of value by collaborating with people. That's you just list out all the things that's wrong with standardized tests and all the ways you can do useful things. And yeah, so I guess I would ask questions like, what are you anxious about? Oh, I don't want to disappoint my parents. What happens if you disappoint your parents? Oh, I'm afraid I'm not going to get a good job. Okay, what happens if that happens? So there's a lot of that. It's not so much me giving a lecture, but it's more of reassuring someone it's going to be okay. You can find ways to harness your skills, your perspectives, the relationships. There's so many. The life is so rich and complex and nuanced, and school is so not. And even just knowing that you are basically in a kind of crazy town, a kind of asylum, right? A kind of prison. I had a friend who has a tweet that's it's not fair to call schools prison. You only get into prison after committing a crime and going through due process, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're having a very natural human response to the institutional structure that you're in, and like you may want to compromise along some dimensions to try and get the most out of it. But basically, the main thing I want to say is that it's okay. Like it's okay to be chafing and frustrated and depressed in school. It is such an environment, and like the world can be so much more than that once you're out. So I'm not saying you should like tell your parents and teachers to fuck off or anything like that. Like nothing dramatic, but you can hopefully breathe a little bit easier knowing what a farce the whole thing is. It's like this whole dog and pony show that's not made for the convenience of you as an individual. It's made for the convenience of the functioning of the system. My friend has a blog post, Florian, he has a blog post called The Tough Tomato Principle, which is the idea that tomatoes are bred to be tougher than most people would like them, because that's just a consequence of the industrial process of like shipping tomatoes through containers and whatever. Like it makes for cheaper tomatoes. It's mainly they're optimizing for price and like volume, and so flavor gets compromised. The assumption is that the average consumer doesn't care, and so but then you're born in a world where you assume that tomatoes are not flavorful, which is not true. And there's like a parallel to this with like school, where school breeds tough tomato students, and we assume that people are not creative or people, can't do things that they can actually do. They just never had a chance to try. Hopefully something in that clicks something, and then it's a beginning of inquiry, right? There's no like one-liner answer that fixes everything. It's more like you have to commit to hearing yourself out, basically. Like, so when people are like mad at themselves for procrastinating and stuff, the sense that I get is that there's some part of themselves that they're not listening to. Some part of yourself it might seem small and silly and irrational and mad or irresponsible, childish, chaotic, like whatever. It's a part of you. It's like your inner child, right? And if you don't listen to him or her, them, they will cause problems, right? And if you get mad at them, it makes it worse. So you have to kind of make time and space to hear yourself out and feel in your body and in your subconscious.
I want to go back to like, I would say journal about why you aren't liking school. And because I think getting in touch with your feelings is just a huge thing here. Like, how are you feeling about school?
Yeah. And the thing I would say is, don't be in a rush to prescribe solutions or like courses of action. Like, I must do my homework or I must do this or whatever. Like, no, before you do that, take like an hour if you can and describe your situation in as much detail as you can and articulate your feelings in as much detail as you can. And often people will be surprised at how some seemingly surprising or unintuitive solutions present themselves when you've taken the time to actually describe what's going on. And because people misdiagnose things so much.
And when you say describe what's going on, I would add to that, describe how you feel before you start doing your homework. And like,
yes,
I know I should be doing my homework right now and I'm feeling scared. Like, and like feelings, fear, anger, sadness, happiness, like jealousy is and then when you're doing your homework, like I'm doing my homework right now and I'm feeling like I'm thinking that I'm stupid and I'm feeling shame for that. Like write stuff like that down. Or it actually turns out homework is fine to do. It's actually just the fear leading up to the homework, which I think a lot of it was for me. And then if I could tell my younger self something, it would probably be getting good grades increases the amount of opportunities that you have. And that's true. But you only need one opportunity to succeed. Like, do something that you really like. Like, not video games, like something that, makes you money, like something that help.
Yeah.
I mean, you can do video games too, but like don't do something productive in your life. And it doesn't need to be
Right.
school based. It can be like writing or, playing music or like making woodwork or whatever, like something that is a skill that can probably earn you a living. And
Yeah,
then,
even with video games, I would be like, try making videos about video games potentially. So I used to blog a lot, and some people would tell me, "Oh, employers don't like opinionated employees." I'm like, that might be true for 99% of employers, but I don't want to work for them anyway. I want a boss who's like, "Oh yeah, I have an opinionated employee. Like, cool, I like that about him." And I did get such a boss, right? So figure out what kind of weirdos you want and look for them, right? Like not all employees are the same, not all romantic partners are the same. Like the world is complex, it's rich, nuanced, it's all kinds of personalities and opportunities. Yeah.
that brings me into friendly ambitious nerds. Like you have this huge goal of bringing together friendly ambitious nerds who can who can work together, make great things. I wonder if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, different people have different inclinations. But what is true, I think, is that everybody needs somebody. Like nobody does things entirely in isolation. I mean, at the most extreme case, even like solitary nerds, they read books, right? Like Newton said, he stood on the shoulder of the giants, so you still have to read. But like, I think for most people, they need some interactions with some other people that they have some shared understanding with, that they feel cared for and they care about. And I see it as my task, given the perspective that I have, to go around introducing people to each other and building the like social environments that other people can participate in, find good friends, and be creative and feel supported. And like, I think Vonnegut had a quote that was like, there's a great many things you can do in this life, but one of the greatest things you can do is to deal with the problem that is loneliness, right? And so I take that to heart. Like, I think making the world a less lonely place for people like myself is profoundly healing and just satisfying. As for background on Friendly Ambitious Nerd, I didn't actually set out to make like a movement or anything. I wanted to publish some ebook for sale for people who like my writing. And so using my marketing background, I'm like, okay, like you should ask people what they think. How do they already talk about my stuff to other people? So I asked like 100 people, hey, how do you introduce people to my tweets or my blog posts? And like, so I got all the responses, and I found that those variables were the big buckets of things people would recommend. They're like, oh, Visa's very friendly. He's always introducing people to each other. He's always very kind, nice. And then Visa's very prolific. He's always asking us to dream bigger, think more. And then Visa's very curious, asking a lot of questions. And so when I like put it all on my mood board, I'm like, okay, like these are the main things. And so if I make that explicit, then that will be like a calling card that I can share with people and like kind of onboard them onto my perspective, my worldview. And yeah, it's been working out really well. Like I think people have contributed even to my understanding of like, so I call it fan now, right? Yeah, and I'm now interested in investigating friendly ambitiousness throughout history. Like they had like if you look to understand human progress, like whenever great inventions are happening or great culture, literature, like these wonderful things happening, it's always a cluster of people, and there's always some people within that cluster who are disproportionately responsible for bringing people together. And like I find that they always fit the description of friendly ambitious nerd. Like they're curious, they want to mingle and introduce people, and they want to do great things. And so I hope to update my book with like that understanding of like, oh, we're not just a bunch of nerds, like we're part of this lineage throughout history of people who bring creative, insightful, curious people together and make cool things happen.
Who are some of the other people throughout history?
One of my favorites is Erasmus, and like if you know that So if you Google Erasmus, you'll find that like in Europe, they've named a bunch of schools. No, there's like this school exchange program that's named after him. Erasmus was he. Let me look up my thread so I can. He he was like born an orphan. His parents died when he was very young, and he was like born out of wedlock. His parents died in the plague. He became a Catholic priest, studied at monastic schools, and he just corresponded with as many people as he could. So he wrote a lot of letters. He wrote to everyone he could, and he eventually became mutuals with like the popes and like Henry VIII. So this was like in the 1500s, and like he kind of became this nexus of the Republic of Letters, and yeah, it's just this one-man correspondence clearinghouse. And then, like another 50 years later, there was Marin Mersenne. He was a mathematician, and they called him the postbox of Europe. So he was friends with like Descartes, Galileo, Pascal, Hobbes. So it's like if you wanted to reach any of those people, you could just send a letter to Mersenne, and he was like the router who would route everything to everyone. And he would just encourage people to publish stuff, and like I think he even encouraged Galileo to publish his work outside of Italy, which he didn't before that. So it's like his fingerprints are all over a lot of great stuff that people did then. So a bunch of people. There's always, so if you go to any productive scene, there's always at least one person like that. Gertrude Stein, she used to host salons in Paris in the 1920s, and like Hemingway and Picasso and all those people would be hanging out at her house, and like just where the magic was happening. And yeah, like when I look into it, I get excited when I even talk about it, because I'm like, it's possible. You can bring magical people together and they produce more magic together, and then it cascades outwards and you make a real difference.
My fiance Elliot is totally like that. He's just a super connector. Nice. He knows everyone, and so we actually met. He said that his strategy for dating and trying to find his wife was to host as many events as possible, and then just yeah, and that's how we met as well. I went to one of his events.
Nice.
It worked out well. But yeah,
he works very, very well.
Yeah, we're in Sydney, and we just have like he's lived in Sydney his whole life. He's just collected like the smartest people in Sydney, and we have dinners, and people are talking about their quantum physics PhDs and like whatever AI startups they're working on, their YouTube channels. Like we've got some really amazing people who just come hang out with us, and like they meet each other. Like we go to groups like events now, and then almost everyone there has met through Elliot, and it's like all these collaborations and these catalysts are happening because he decided to like host a bunch of events.
Nice, yeah. So more people should do stuff like that. I think it's underappreciated, undervalued, understood, all of those things.
And it's also amazing, like how much you can benefit from it. Like yeah. I mean,
it's pure wealth creation, I feel.
For sure. Oh my God, for sure. Just anything you build, like building things and putting it in public has an outsized impact for sure. Like my podcast, I mean, I have almost 1,000 subscribers, and like I have gotten quite a few clients from it for like video editing and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I mean, it's making me way more money than I thought 1,000 subscribers would ever have made me. It's pretty wild. Yeah. It's amazing.
All right, Serene, this has been a lot of fun, but I got to run off.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for...
I could go on all night.
Oh, I know. But you have a baby, and you need to take care of that baby.
Exactly.
All right, so where can everyone find you?
You can just Google me, I guess, Visakan V, on Twitter, YouTube, my Substack. So I'm trying to write more Substack essays. So I think that's where my energy is going to be devoted this year. Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much. This has been super fun. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. I'll talk to you later.